Hello, Sabine.
Very nice to meet you here. I just have one question. After all what you experience in your life, do you have a message to the people in this world? How they can get out of the system? How they can do it?
Well, the answer is quite simple. It's liberating yourself. But said that, it's not that easy as it's said. Based on my own experience in life, I get aware of being born in this world, that because of the program, you start to protect yourself. You start to learn a certain of behavior. And during the time you grow up, your child, your original being, starts to be in a cocoon most of the time. And we are talking about world and life, and it's all like everything is fine. But deep inside of us is the child. And that child wants to go out. And that's a thing who is really needed. And in my case, after all these years, this child is coming out. And it wants to join this world. But the world we are living in is not so nice. Not so nice for the children. Also not nice for our children. The child inside of you. So to make this liberation happening, the only thing we have to do is being aware of our own child. That it needs to go out, it wants to go out, but it needs a different world. And we can create this new world together. To liberate our children, to liberate ourselves, our child. We can live together in a world of peace, a world of harmony, a world of abundance. We can create this all together, and the tools are there. The only thing we have to do is stand up and to join each other to work cooperative. Because there are so many bright people in this world with a lot of nice inventions, to have good healthcare, to have clean energy, to have a good financial system, all tools to serve us instead of using us as a product. But now, in this world, we are cows. They're milking us. So, I would like to invite all the people in this world to watch the interviews who are already given, to experience my own testimony about life. And then it's for them more understandable what I'm talking about now. Because now, maybe for a lot of people, it's like, who is this weird guy? What is he talking about?
Exactly.
Yeah. But I can only share the things I have experienced in my life, in my inner world. And that's the most important. First, you have to go inside to your inner world to discover really who you are, to touch your own childness again, to be a child again, in an adult body. It doesn't matter. Just being the child again and inviting all the other children on the earth to start playing with each other again instead of fighting and being in war. There's no need. It's only a few people on this earth who are so in emptiness, so in big black holes in themselves. They're the monsters of greed, and they created the system we live in. And all day they are sucking our energy because they need it. From the moment we cut that kind of change,
then we are free.
We are free. So people, be aware. From the moment you are aware, you're ready for action. See you.
Thank you very much, and I hope to see you soon in Germany.
Yeah, would be nice too, Germany.
Yeah.
Actually, the whole world is nice.
Ronald, you have a very strong background in the financial sector, asset management, deposit trading. As far as I understood, can you tell us something about your experiences? For how long did you work there?
Well, my experiences are more complicated than what you mentioned just now. Actually, I have been an entrepreneur my entire life. Independence being the key component to me. I have once tried being an employee, but that didn't work out. Being an entrepreneur, I have seen many sectors, amongst which I have experienced the financial world. All my other companies as an entrepreneur, like my own fashion line for ladies, car dealership and also import-export, had me involved to such an extent with building up my own fortune. It inherently guided me into the world of finance. Working in import-export, you encounter different currencies and you have to go to the exchange to trade through brokers. And one of the brokers said at some point, "Ronald, I've been looking at your life for a long time and you are always busy. You earn money, we know, but what is your goal?" And I replied, "The only goal I have as an entrepreneur is to earn as much money as I possibly can. Because, the more money I have, the quicker I can retire, be free and of course have status. Basically everything you want in this society, or at least, that's what I thought back then." So the broker said, "In that case, stop what you are doing now, stop with all those companies and just start dealing money, go into the financial world." And that is the beginning of that situation that is connected to your original question. The broker had a place in the exchange market and he dealt in currencies, deposits, so trading in assets to make money out of differences in interest rates, and that involved the aforementioned asset management. Those three aspects together formed the interested package I said yes to. He said, "All right, you can take my place here, I'll train you, introduce you into the network. But in exchange I want 10% of your annual earnings." So he basically sold me his spot in the financial world and asked a 10% commission, which I paid him. I said, "Yes, fine with me." Then he replied, "There is one thing you need to know. If you can't put your conscience in the proverbial freezer, and I don't mean on -18 degrees, but on -100 degrees, then don't get involved in this." That was the message. You want a lot of money, you can obtain that, I can help you, but it comes at a great cost. Because you cannot do this with a clear conscience. Well, I laughed at that. I was young and naive. From my youth, from the way I came into life, my far from ideal youth led me to develop a certain view of the world and humanity.
What do you mean by that? No warm, loving family?
My mother always did the best she could to make us feel loved. But she was hampered by that due to the behavior of my father, who caused us to feel more like we lived in a war zone with each other. That isn't an exemplary situation to grow up in. And as a child growing up like that, led me to believe that the world and humanity are far from great.
So putting your conscience in the freezer was fitting in as a starting point?
I was partially already used to doing that out of self-preservation. So to put my conscience in the freezer was not an impossible task to me.
So it became a survival mechanism to you?
Yes, yes. And my view of humanity and the world around me wasn't exactly positive either. I only thought of myself, that the way I grew up to be out of self-preservation, and I got into that deal. Which meant that slowly I built up a customer base. And as I improved my skills within the network, I got deeper into the financial world.
kwam ik ook steeds dieper, zeg maar, in die financiële wereld terecht. En dan
And then it turns out the world is really small and you keep noticing that. Even when I was still working in import-export, dealing in grain and such, you notice it is just a small circle. And if we talk about the hardcore circle in the financial world, I don't mean Miss Jean at the bank but the big global flows of money which you use for trading.
Zeg maar, de grote geldstromen die op aarde rondgaan, waar je mee gaat handelen.
You are talking about worldwide cash flows, so not the Netherlands in particular where you started working?
The Netherlands do play a distinct part in this story, but the world does not revolve around it.
Maar Nederland is niet het centrum van de aarde. Nederland is een
The
onderdeel
Netherlands are a part of a large global financial system, in which you work through exchange mark if you want to do official transactions.
Als je officiële transacties wil doen, kan je dat via beurs doen. En heel veel banken,
And many banks, who do the currency
de
exchange,
geldwisselaars zijn,
get certain assignments from clients, which they can't get away with easily.
Moeilijk mee weg kunnen. En dan is het handig.
Then the need arises for people like me, who were the straw men where big money flows are involved.
Je kan ook zeggen de loopjongen van het grote geld.
We used certain financial constructions, international legislation, to move money in such a way making everything okay.
Het geld zo gaan bewegen dat het allemaal oké is. Dus dat
So all supervisors, regulatory bodies that are in place worldwide, because they are. That no one wakes up seeing what is going on, like a year or two ago, with the scandal around Panama.
Een hoop ophef hadden over Panama.
The Panama Papers.
Yes,
Tax evasion.
I think. Well, it was about avoiding taxes. Tax evasion is when you break all the rules. This had to do with avoiding.
Het ging hier om ontwijken.
But when you see what happened there, I'm like, guys, that is old news. And who are you bring with that because it is peanuts and hardly relevant. However, for the common people, that is great news, but it is not anything big, but it does show there is something very wrong in this world. For example, there are people in the Netherlands, with certain positions, who have bank accounts in Panama, with legislation that allows them not to pay taxes in the Netherlands, which is completely legal. Constructions like that were part of my job. When we had to change currency, we had changes, the first boycotts in Iraq in the early 90s.
Was in het begin van de jaren 90.
When there was a boycott in Iraq because of the war that started there.
Die daar was ontstaan.
And we were confronted with what we called Iraqi dollar.
Iraqi dollars kwamen vrij. Die Iraqi dollars.
Iraqi dollars, which were actually American dollars. The American dollar has a direct relation to the oil prices, which made it a world trading currency backed up by oil. As long as that connection is in place, the dollar has a value. Officially, the Iraqi people weren't allowed to sell their oil due to the boycott. In theory that is, because never before there was such a big business in oil. With discounts in this case, because officially it wasn't allowed, so with discounts it still crossed the borders. These dollars, because the energy was always paid in the dollars, so the Iraqi dollars had to go somewhere. You couldn't just take them to the desk at the bank because of all the regulations and checks that provide a certain protection. Because money laundering and criminality wasn't anything new back then. Now we call it terrorism. But that was then also the case. So, then you need people to take the heat. As straw men, you got invited to a bank, for example, in Germany's, with basements full of trucks filled with money. And then you think, sure. Trucks, transports, a busy company. Come with me, then they show you they are all filled to maximum capacity with dollars. And they tell you we need to get rid of all this cash. So change them pounds, German marks, this, that, in such way, and it needs to go there and there.
Are we now talking about money laundering?
Well, processing cash. Processing cash in such a way that we can legally reintroduce it into the money circuit.
So that was your task?
That was an assignment my colleagues and I got. You are never alone on an assignment, because you cannot do this on your own. It is not possible. We all know Scrooge McDuck scooping money with his shovel. Well, we literally had to do that over there. It was impossible to process all at once. So, then you need to find a way. Cash used to be the predominant way of paying, where nowadays most is digital. But you tried to find a way to process the cash. How do you reintroduce the cash into the circuit so Iraq can deal in its oil without being hampered? Because they are the ones that own the money. Iraq doesn't want. Look, you mentioned money laundering, but what it was about the boycott, Iraq had to stick to the rules, and buy, you know, everything you want to know about the world. You can know by following the money. That is the bottom line. Everyone can say blah, 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 but make sure you follow the money, then you'll find the truth. Same thing goes for that situation. So the only thing Iraq and their buying partners wanted was to remain free of any accusations. Because the partners who bought it were the ones placing the boycott in the first place, but they are actually all friends on the same side. Everybody thinks there are opposites like good and bad guys in the world. But on the higher levels, it is just a game and they are all working together. However, they do have to stick to the rules and regulations they themselves have created to keep the rest of society suppressed and make sure that it will not be too crowded at the top. So you have to play by your own rules. So what is going on there is to make sure that nobody can trace you, apart from the elite themselves. Nobody in lower ranks can find out what really happened.
Compartmentalized, that's how we call it.
Yes.
Everyone knows only his own little piece. Only the elite knows what is happening.
Yes, but because we were doing the dirty work, we had to know a lot. Because we couldn't afford to make any mistakes.
How high in the pyramid did you get? Were you close to the top of the pyramid?
Well, we were communicating with them. My ego would have loved it when I got to this position of belonging to the top itself. Nowadays we still talk about 8,000 to 8,500 people in the world who run the entire world. It would have been amazing to get into such a position back then.
All right, but if we say the top knows 100%, can you estimate how much you knew and understood of what happened?
In my work, I had to know 100% of what was going on. There was no other way, because of the interests of the people involved were huge, especially for the top. If I wouldn't know all the details, I would end up making mistakes. Which would cause a spin-off, because those mistakes would be detected. Then the people that don't know anything about it would interfere. We are talking about having nerves of steel to function at this level.
So did you have nerves of steel?
Yes, it worked just fine.
The freezer worked very well for you.
Yes, I played at the highest level for about 5 years. And then it was totally over, out and done with. That was a very intense moment for me.
That happened suddenly?
Well, no, the thing is, I gave a small example of what was involved. So, in this case, currency exchange, dollar to something else, deposited in a safe manner, and managing assets well, so it could grow to rate of return, leading to reinvestments with the money.
Weer investeringen konden gedaan worden met het geld.
The level I played at in those 5 years. And that didn't happen overnight, you need to earn your place. I am skilled at connecting the dots, information in order to achieve a full picture of all the things involved.
Informaties op een bepaalde manier met elkaar te combineren.
That need to be taken into account within the playing field.
Rekening mee moet houden binnen het speelveld.
Which is a very detailed process. You stand out when you are gifted in this. This is the reason I was trusted with the full 100% of the information where it concerned my jobs. So, I didn't know about everything they knew, but everything that I needed to know regarding the case I was working with colleagues. I was often put in the leading role, because I kept a good overview of the situation.
You're good at making quick switches.
Yes, and I was good at innovative thinking to solve the problem. I had fun, creating solutions in such a way to always stay ahead and outsmart them. Staying within the rules of the game but playing around with them to make everything match up. I love that game. However, on the other hand, you had a great amount of responsibility and you learned more and more about the real world, since through the financial world you learn all of the actual truth.
So you say all. In what regard?
Well, your clients give you glimpses of how the world really works. In hindsight, I still didn't know everything. But I did know a lot, because my clients were banks, who didn't want blood on their hands. But within those banks there always is a number of people who know damn well what is going on. So, like 1% within a bank knows the truth of the matter regarding the happenings within the world. Which is not surprising, considering they are involved in the flows of money. Those are your clients. You also have governments to deal with, multinationals, you have to deal with secret services, and what they now call terrorist organizations. You get all of the groups that are involved with the big money as clients. Then you start seeing the connections, so, they might be compartmentalized as you just mentioned, regarding knowledge. But because I am in the middle I see how they relate to another. You see the money coming from this place, then going to that place, etc. You keep gaining information and thereby an overview of what is really going on.
So do you have to serve and keep all of those groups happy, including terrorist organizations? You were trying to keep everybody happy?
Yes.
My God.
That was my job.
Keeping all the balls in the air.
Yes, indeed. So one of the things that I found out, I did not know that before, but now I do, is about secret services. You think they are there to serve and protect a people, country, etc., but they actually turn out to be the criminal organizations, to be more precise. The system is heavily so. We are talking about financing wars, creating wars, so basically creating a lot of misery in this world. So, lots of conflict. And then I think to myself, if only people knew what the world is really like. Secret services will stop at nothing. Nothing. But they also have their flows of money, because if they are trading in drugs or weapons or, for that matter, people, all that money has to go somewhere. Everything has to be financed.
You say if, but you could confirm they are doing this?
All of them? All of them? So the entire world as we think we know it, is just an illusion we believe in. Which is something you find out in this line of work and where it all went wrong for me, to put it that way.
Right. You mean, finally that is.
In hindsight, yes, it was for the best, but my freezer started to malfunction. There were things happening. For example, I went to a different trade market and one of my colleagues there said, "Ronald, you remember that case with the Italian lira? I sometimes mention that during talks as well. Do you remember those deals, in which we did massive dumping of the lira, which reduced the value of the currency?"
waardoor dus
which
het
caused a
bedrijf
company in
Italië
Italy
daar
to be hit
last
in
van
such a
kreeg,
way.
dusdanig
They
de
went
manier waarop het
bankrupt.
bedrijf over de kop ging. En dat je
And
dan op
then
de
you
beurs
hear at
hoort,
the
dan weet je nog met die
exchange, you
succesvolle
remember that
Italiaanse
successful deal with the lira? Yes.
en dat ze dan
And
zeggen,
then they
weet je
say,
dat de
did you know
eigenaar
that the owner committed suicide and left a family behind?
dat soort dingen.
Things like that. And back then we laughed at it. All together, all of us. We looked down on people, mocked them. It was just a product, waste. Everything was worthless trash. Nature, the planet, everything could burn and break.
Just useless parasites.
Just as long as we met our goals, as long as we were growing, many of my colleagues ended up drinking or using drugs. Not me. Maybe I should have.
Or not.
No, in hindsight, it was for the best and I'm happy to still be alive.
Maar al die opstapelingen van al die erge dingen.
However, all those horrible things started to eat at me.
Can you give an example? Because I can sense a lot of terrible things happen to you.
Ja.
Yes, it is difficult for me to talk about.
I can feel that, but only whatever you wish to share is all right.
Yes, I only talk about things I want to tell. But it does evoke lots of emotions, and with my conscience not being in the freezer, it touches me deeply.
Yes, I feel the same way. All right. Can you tell me the worst thing that has happened that caused the tipping point in your situation?
Well, that was the beginning of the end. You get so deep into these circles. And you sign a lifetime contract, not with blood or anything, to never disclose names of companies, organizations or people. I think that is why I am still alive. You have to stick to it. If we are talking about the worst things that I have experienced, I just told you about things that made the freezer glitch. My conscience started to show itself. Let's put it this way. I was training to become a psychopath and I failed. I did not complete the training and didn't become a psychopath. My conscience came back, and the most difficult part for me was, because I had such a great status there, I was a success. I was trusted with the people playing at this level.
Mensen in deze wereld die dus op dat niveau speelden. Ik moet ook zeggen dat
to put it carefully, most of these people followed a not very mainstream religion. So, you have Catholics, Protestants, all sorts of religions. These people, most of them, were Luciferians. And then you can say, religion is a fairy tale. God doesn't exist. None of that is real. Well, for these people, it is truth and reality. And they served something immaterial, what they called Lucifer. And I also was in contact with those circles, only I laughed at it because to me they were just clients. So, I went to places called churches of Satan.
So now we are talking about Satanism.
Yes. So, I visited these churches, just as a visitor dropped by. And then they were doing their holy mass with naked women and liquor and stuff. And it just amused me. I didn't believe in any of this stuff, and was far from convinced if any of this was real.
It was just a spectacle to you.
Yes, in my opinion, the darkness and evil is within the people themselves. I didn't make the connection yet. So I was a guest in those circles, and it amused me greatly to see all those named women and the other things.
Omdat ik vond het allemaal wel leuk, al die blote vrouwen en al die dingetjes die daar speelden.
It was the good life. But then at some point, I was invited, which is why I'm telling you all this, to participate in sacrifices abroad.
That
was the breaking point. Children.
You were asked to do that?
Yes. And I couldn't do that.
Would you like to stop for a moment, by the way?
No. And then I started to slowly break down. I lived through quite a lot as a child myself, and this really touched me deeply. Everything changed. But that is the world I found myself in. And then I started to refuse assignments within my job. I could no longer do it, which made me a threat. I was no longer capable of functioning optimally. My performance started to shake and I had refused tasks. I had not participated. The purpose of the whole thing, eventually, in that world, is that they have everybody in their pocket. You need to be susceptible to blackmail. And blackmailing me proved to be very hard if I look back on it. They wanted to do that through those children. And that broke me.
Is that, you are not telling me something new, what they also do in politics?
If you Google this, you'll find enough worldwide witness accounts to know this isn't a Walt Disney fairy tale. Unfortunately, the truth is that worldwide they have been doing this for thousands of years. I once studied theology, and even in the Bible you find references to these practices with Israelites. The reason the first 10 tribes were banished to Babylonia was because of these rituals with children, including the sacrificing of children. So this is pertinent. All this made me believe, because I realized there was more to life than meets the eye. There is a whole invisible world. It is real. You really do talk about a dark force and a manifestation of light. So, I resorted to studying theology to make sense of it all.
And psychology as well, if I remember correctly?
Yes, but that I did in my first life, because through commercial psychology, mass psychology, I was able to manipulate situations for my own benefit.
That is scary, because if you dig into that you find Tavistock Institute and mind control, MK Ultra, Monarch and the like.
Yes, that is correct, but that was all part of the job. Through training at the job, I got into that more deeply, because when you are making deals, you also need to manipulate the media. You have to manipulate lots of things because nothing can be seen as it is. Everything has to appear to be something different. You see the people as a flock of sheep. You put a couple of border collies and drive them in a direction. And to be honest with you, I still see that happening around me. People are still, through the systems and methods that we ourselves used to use, being treated in that same way, and it still works. People still don't understand how it really works and are still on the level of as long as I have my beer and whatever, completely self-absorbed, also a survival mechanism. I mean, it is the program after all. But you still see how stupidly easy it is to put people in a certain direction, when you are the one pulling the strings, that is.
Mass psychology.
Yes, and later, much later, in all those studies and discoveries, I found a document which they are claiming is bullshit, of course, the Protocols of Zion. And nowadays I recommend everyone to read the whole of that incredibly boring document. Just work through it, read it though.
We are also talking about Zionism.
Yes, of course. If you read the Protocols of Zion, and really study them and understand, then it is like reading the newspaper of the daily life. How from their position of ultimate power, and ultimate it has literally become. But that is only because the people don't stand up for themselves. They don't realize what reality is.
And we have all been programmed. If you dare to say you are against Zionism, then you are branded an anti-Semite.
The negative, you can say evil, the Luciferians, the Satanists, whatever you wish to call it, it is a real entity. I have found that what is written in the Bible, and not just the Bible, you can find it in so many books. There really has been a moment of separation from the manifestation of light, in which a group went their own way and are carrying an intense hatred, anger. The people who do not underestimate the severity of this are but few. Because this is an all-annihilating force that hates our guts. It hates creation. It hates life. And it will do anything to destroy us completely. And the way to do that is to divide humanity. Divide and conquer is their truth. Humanity is a manifestation of light. That is the true creation. As long as you divide them based on political parties, skin color, you name it, then you, from a Luciferian point of view that is, suppress the full capacities of your enemy, their full power. They can't stand up for themselves, because if that would happen, the Luciferians would lose. Then this monster, the greedy monster, would disappear. I tell people about this old American general who puts an entire room of people in the dark. The eyes adapt to the darkness, but you can't see a thing. The general doesn't say a word and suddenly he flicks on a lighter, one little light. And due to the prolonged darkness, you experience a manifestation of light from a single point and everyone can slightly see each other again. And then he says, that is the power of our light.
Beautiful.
Unite. Unite. Come together. And this entire shit story ceases to exist. That's how fast it could happen. But that is easy for me to say now. But then I was in a period of my life in which I was crumbling down.
Could you tell us something specific about that? How did that happen? Because you were invited.
I started to refuse assignments. My conscience came back after the request involving the children and I started to refuse more and more. I had a conscience and I couldn't function anymore.
But you did still show up at work after that?
I didn't really have a choice. I had my own business with several offices and employees. Everything was still rolling.
It must have been hard.
Yes, it got very hard, all the tensions. So, on the one hand you are playing with money on a high level, in which you can't afford to make mistakes. Otherwise everything falls down at once. Your entire business is ruined, everybody involved, including yourself. Then you are really screwed. So that brings a lot of stress, factoring in the resurfacing of a conscience. I was warned off when I got into this. Don't do it if you can't put your conscience at minus 100 degrees in the freezer.
And you probably realized that then?
Yes, I heard myself laugh at it back then. But it wasn't a joke at all. I totally did not understand where I really got into.
And your proverbial freezer was switched off?
Broken. I couldn't do it anymore. So, I tried to work through it, keep up appearances. I didn't know how to get out of this. I was trapped as well. Everybody was trapped. This all led me to crash completely eventually. My body just simply stopped. The first thing I saw was my mother crying at the intensive care.
You ended up at the IC?
Yeah, I really shut down.
You had literally crashed?
Yes. Yes. At that time I didn't believe in anything, not I can still recall how I saw. From that corner, I was looking down upon myself. I saw how they were working on me.
You had a near-death experience.
Well, you could call it that. I have seen I am not my body. I'm in my body. But I am not just my body. I have seen them working on me. And later on, I've been reluctant to talk about it for a long time. I really talked about it much later. But when I did, I had researched so many things already and started to believe. I was starting to better understand the spiritual and the material. At that point, this intense experience got its own place. The realization that I'm not my body. It's just a vessel. So, I lived through all of that, but I also needed a long time to recover.
Yes, of course.
Yes, I was a train wreck. Complete wreck. I was completely burned out. I had crashed and the body needed a year to recover. Because I don't really want to get into it now, but in those circles, I got tortured physically during my exit time. This was in order to make sure I would never break the contract of secrecy. So, I was taken for a certain amount of time. I was treated. All those factors together just increased the stress I was experiencing. Literally running full speed towards my own end.
Do you mean abductions, as well call it, or programming?
No. They exposed me to certain types of torture. That makes sure you'll never damage anyone in that world. I didn't realize that back then, so this is all from hindsight. It did all happen that way. So the end of my first life was so extreme that I couldn't handle it anymore. I couldn't handle it anymore, in no way. However, my mind power was so strong that it only happened within to my own body. That was, well, I didn't know what to do anymore. There were no options left for me. So that is why sometimes I think, of course that is not true, but I wish, like so many colleagues, I had taken the drugs and alcohol route. At least my end would have been more gentle, because most of them are just dead by now. Even though I know there are more strawmen walking around, there are little still alive whom I knew back then. Most of them are already gone. Well, I was dead too. But I'm still here.
So, you still have something left to do.
Yes, I suppose you could say that. But that is, I can't say in short, since I don't know how long we have been talking, the world that I found myself in. If you have any specific questions, then I can answer them, but I had hoped to be more concise, but I just don't know how.
Well, you have my gratitude for all you have shared.
To me, it is still a very big deal.
Ronald, you were previously mentioning the pyramid. I was talking about the top of this pyramid, 8,500 people. Could you tell us about how things operate up there nowadays?
Yes, certainly. These 8,500 people make use of a monetary system, a financial monetary system, which we refer to as money and banks, used in our daily lives. So, the mechanism they use is indeed a system in the shape of a pyramid. So you have the top of 8,000 to 8,500 people, then the layer under them. They have created an institution in 1930. This was done from the Netherlands called the BIS, the Bank for International Settlements, with headquarters situated in Switzerland. They are the headquarters of the banks and of the financial system. The top 8,500 people gives orders to BIS in Basel, from which it propagates downward through the system to be executed. We know Basel from the Basel agreements. It went wrong with the banks and then we got Basel I, Basel II, Basel III. Some people have heard of the agreements or read about them in the newspaper. That's all about the BIS. So, as I just said, this came into existence in 1930, originating from the Netherlands. And already in 1931 was BIS recognized worldwide by basically all countries to be the headquarters of the financial world. Every central bank is a member of this BIS club.
De centrale bank in de wereld is dus ook lid van die club.
Which is a civil organization, not a governmental one, who have a headquarters agreement that describes in total what the BIS stands for.
Staat eigenlijk helemaal beschreven waar die BIS over gaat.
Its range of power, authorization level, operations and output. When you are reading in these documents what they stand for, they are available on their website. You see how they have incorporated all these rules, recognized worldwide, claiming their independency from Switzerland. The grounds their headquarters are on are independent from the country.
Het grondgebied waar het op staat heeft Zwitserland niks over te vertellen.
It also states their immunity. It also states they are above all worldly rules. Nobody can touch them. They have complete immunity. So, they have a complete immunity from everything on earth. Furthermore, they have their own police service, so you can't just go in yelling, "You bastards," or something of the sort, because you won't get away with it. To be concise, it's a fully recognized, immune state, beyond the grasp of any rules, inviolable. This institute was also the location during World War I and before, in which the so-called enemies, the Nazis and their allies met up, in which they traded gold raided from Jewish people of states or other people.
Wat was geroofd van Joodse mensen of van staten of anderen.
BIS is a club in which they are all friends. And these headquarters maintain the monetary system as it is and assures the amount of currency. At the so-called bottom of the pyramid, where all value is located at the bottom, means real life there where people live, where the earth is, nature. And the real value at the bottom of the pyramid is being extorted. They do this by using the financial system. Under the central bank, the BIS, we find the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. People can read about this in the newspapers, and the World Bank. These two institutes often help countries when needed. What they really do is create debt in these countries in such a way that they will never be able to pay it off. They actually calculate the amount needed in order to ensure this fact, enabling them to increase the grip they have on a country or continent such as Africa, which is rich in resources, very rich. Through their connections with friends, multinationals, they can extort the value from the countries by allowing them to pay in kind, resources for the debt they'll never be able to resolve.
So, they pay with labor, slave labor you could say, I suppose.
Yes, and the only requirement is buying off the top within such a country. Blackmail them with children, or severance pay. You name it. You buy them off and then you own them.
En daarmee heb je dus eigenlijk een land op zak. Dat is die
laag onder this was the first layer under BIS, the World Bank and IMF. The next layer would be the central banks. Again, all civil organizations, independent from governmental organizations, amongst which, nowadays, we have the Central Bank of Europe. We used to also have the national banks in this layer, but they have been demoted to being side offices of the Central Bank of Europe.
Where do we find the city in this story?
You mean the city of London? This is also a free state.
As in Vatican City?
Yes, Vatican City. There is also such a place in Washington. There are many free states in the world at the same level, like the BIS in Basel. Vatican Bank in Vatican City is an example of such a free state. When we take the City of London, and we can speak of one of the biggest financial cores of the world. which for example determines the gold rate. They manipulate the gold rate on a daily basis, so they are able to fill people with money or empty them altogether. This makes London City a core player in the financial world. They are a very important mechanism in the bigger scheme, when we are talking about the pyramid, because we were talking about the structure of the BIS in Basel. Then IMF and World Bank, then the central banks like the Federal Reserve in America and others. Then the regular banks, but also stock market centers. We are now talking about these free states with immunity from everyone. Free states where nothing and no one can do anything against this, included the people working for these institutes. They also got immunity.
Are they on the same level as BIS?
No, BIS delegates the execution of instructions to the others, the headquarter of the headquarters. And from out of BIS all instructions are entered and set to all the layers below.
Alright, so also to the city.
Yes, indeed. They are all instructed from the top. So, to pick up from the regular banks we just mentioned, under them we find the multinationals and then below we find the governments. And finally under them we find ourselves, the people, the real life. And one of the mechanisms they use, something we have accepted as normal, is the interest rate. In our society, money is created from a contract, based on debt. So, let us take this piece of paper. You go to the bank, we all are familiar with this principle, and ask for a loan or a mortgage, and you put your signature. The moment you do this, they create a debt on one side on your bank account and a credit on the other side. The credit goes to whatever you were trying to buy, car, house, etc. The debt is yours from now on, so out of nowhere they digitally created money. That's how they create all the money in the world, based on debt. That is only one part. This is an economy based on debt. But there's also a component that you could call usage costs, interest rates. Then in school with economics they teach you that there are savings on the opposite because someone worked really hard for it. So, it makes sense that he receives something for the money he lends to someone else. Well, all of that isn't true. But what it is about is that this interest rate of 5% a year on average was not created in the contract of debt. This means they have to take the interest out of some other contract, which causes the start of the global shortage, leading to competition all over the world and virtually creates all misery we experience amongst the people, in society. There is a continuous stream of this 5% interest rate that is taken from the bottom of the pyramid and whisked away to the top capital. When we do the math, 5 times 10 years. After 10 years it is 50%, after 20 years 100%. The shortages just keep increasing. To solve this they keep creating debt contract based on debt contract worldwide in all the layers, people, government, companies, etc. Debt on debt, to cover the holes they whisked away 5% leaves. They are sucking the real value, resources, out of the world, like a bunch of vampires. That is what it is. In 20 years, they already stole 100% of the real value. This is what causes the national debts to increase. You will see everywhere, with individuals, that those debts keep growing. Then reports start showing up, like Oxfam Novib, after a global research did show that 8 people own as much as half the people in this world. How is that possible? It's not just speculation, it's the interest rate that takes the real actual value and adds it to the capital at the top. Last thing about this pyramid, you have rules, laws, armies, police services, fiscal services, name them. You have all these rules and laws and organizations on the other side that ensure the bottom layer, real life, stays where it is, to make sure they don't end up with 7 million in the top. They don't want that, so it's tightly closed. As long as people don't realize how this works, how they're deceived, how they're being robbed, how the real value, their value, is taken away from them to enrich the rich even further, as long as people don't see this, as long as they are not aware, nothing will change. Then I am talking about the old world, because all misery on earth is a business model. Syria is a business model. It is about resources and some other interests. All of that is being orchestrated by one organization, the top of the pyramid, and delegated through them.
As you said earlier, follow the money, because eventually that is what it's all about.
Yes, very much so. So when you see how this value extraction, I've brought an article from NOS, Dutch news channel, which anyone can Google. If you Google this, gas prices increase inflation. Apart from the fact that the title is already incorrect, it is very interesting to read. The article is from February 9, 2017. Most of the things they are describing is a distortion of the truth. Because if the prices of gas increase, it does not mean that it actually is more cost. No, it means our salary is worth less. Our currency is being depreciated, purchasing power decreases. That is what inflation is. So, what is found to be very remarkable is the nuggets of truth we do get from them, even though it is from NOS. Because it states, with the adjusted inflation rate of 1.6%, the Netherlands are up to speed again with the European inflation, which averages 1.8% a year. On average, your salary is worth 1.8% a year less, which decreases our purchasing power yearly. This is exactly why in the past one single person with a good job could sustain the entire family and two full-timers can hardly make ends meet and are being trapped in a crisis. Because 1.2 million people in the Netherlands are in debt and won't get out of it anymore. It's not some wild tale. And then the important part, the European Central Bank, you know, the one on the top of the pyramid, has tried for the last 2 years, by use of policies for low interest rate and continuous money printing, they create 80 billion of new money every month, using contracts based on debt contracts to increase the inflation within the Eurozone to the desired level of almost 2% per year. Hence, they are stealing 2% a year of our labor and time of production which we are receiving a salary for. They are consciously stealing 2% a year and then they say the prices are increasing. That is a blatant lie. Our money is depreciated. That is what they are doing. So next to the interest rate, we find to be normal, is inflation another way, and inflation is theft. So they extract value in multiple ways. Now we are talking about the financial mechanism the elite uses to extort value, through a financial monetary system, an economic system. They do so through the banks. The banks being the key to this process. We are talking about BSN, Citizen Service Number. I sometimes say, service. I think, is it a citizen service number or a citizen slavery number? If people realize where we find ourselves and see we are in a rat race of competition and scarcity, they should research the financial system that only services to better the rich and keep the poor miserable. Interest, a take-home message, interest. According to statistics calculated by economists, is paid by 80% of the people during their entire lifetime. 10% receives some interest and pays some, and the other 10% only receives interest. So this already illustrates the problem at hand. The main portion of humans pays the system their entire lives, and a small portion takes from the system. National debt, over the last 30 years we pay 13 billion in interest per year for national debt. From the taxes paid by citizens, 13 billion of this created money goes to privately owned banks. This again based on money, created out of nothing, with a contract of debt in which our state happily engages. The government happily plays along and pays the privately owned banks the usage fees. If we would keep this 13 billion a year, average over 30 years, we would not need to economize anymore. So when people realize this seemingly innocent interest rate is actually the big corrupter causing all the trouble. Moreover, when the Catholics were still ruling Europe, interest rates were illegal and punishable by death. The death penalty for charging interest. It is a biggie in holy books as it is described.
It is actually still illegal.
Yes, Islamic banking. Unfortunately, nowadays several new calculation models are established which is also a form of interest charging. But the pure Islamic banking was the last to stay away from charging interest. The funny thing about Islamic banking is that 50% of the people are Islamic at all. It is a purely ethical, morally, based on principle decisions to bank without interest rates. These people are aware of the damage it causes.
Meanwhile, politicians look away. I understood the Court of Audit does not even have access to what ECB does.
No. They are privately owned organizations and have so much authority and protection that they don't require anything at all.
Then what is the Court of Auditors and the government doing in our names?
These kinds of institutions serve the political system. For example, the elections, they calculated budgets of parties and their plans. You could use it for good, but you can also use it to serve certain agendas. During the election period, they calculated things in such a way to show how extremely well we were all doing. Things are going better, new jobs, all things to show how amazing things are now. As soon as the elections are done and over with, we will start hearing about economizing once again.
However, the Court of Audit doesn't even have access to data of banks. They have no right to it.
Well, officially, companies do have yearly reports, but you are talking about a level in which decisions are made that are not made public.
Exactly.
Yes, you are right. But that is true for BIS. There is another mechanism, well, many others. You've got ESM, European Stability Mechanism. The House of Representatives, I think in 2012, gave 100 votes to create this. ESM is an institute that is again fully protected. Employees are indemnified. They are immune. The organization is allowed to do what they want. Nothing is publicly available, as an entity is sort of a free state. This organization, empowered by the representatives, ministers, the government, was initially made to save countries which soon became banks instead. And this mechanism, the ESM mechanism, ensures that within 7 days, any required amount of money, be it 10 billion or 100 billion, has to be delivered by the Netherlands within 7 days. So if ESM decides it wants to save, for example, Greece, and they need money, they can assign Germany. The government in the Netherlands gives us 10 billion. Then that has to be sent within 7 days to ESM so they can execute their program to save, in this case, banks. So if we take Greece as an example, a lot of money has been sent through ESM, not even 5% has actually arrived in Greece. Most of it has directly gone through Greece to German, French and Dutch banks.
Naar Duitse banken, Franse banken, Nederlandse banken. Die allemaal zaten te gokken op.
They were all betting on Greece and made sure they could buy themselves out of stocks on Greece.
Dat hun, zeg maar, geen aandelen meer hadden op Griekenland.
So they have freed themselves through these mechanisms. And all that money is coming from us, from our tax money and national debt and so on. All these mechanisms, what we are talking about now, ensure we remain where we are and impoverish more, and of course the rich getting richer.
En rijk alleen maar rijker wordt. Dus,
So, that is where you find your task to inform the people.
Yes, that is why we currently give lectures in the Netherlands and Belgium.
In Nederland en in België.
That is not just me but also colleagues. We are slowly arriving at how to solve this part.
Indeed, yes.
Because it is all fun. Well, it isn't really fun, but when you get to the bottom of how this world functions, the world I found myself in, and how it still bulldozes over everything, making the world worse and worse with all its programs and agendas. All business models, that includes vaccinations, all of a sudden, a pandemic arises. And the Dutch run to their doctor to get their shots, not to get sick.
That is getting less, by the way.
Yes, fortunately there is a tendency downward. I remember this other not even existing pandemic. With the former minister Klink, who later had to, after everybody got swine flu or avian flu vaccinations. Of some sort, anyway, very scary.
H1N1 or something.
Yes, and it turns out he still had many surplus vaccines. And it had to be processed through highly chemical disposal mechanisms. Because of the hazard it formed to all life, to nature. But shooting it into people was not a problem, of course. Anything else was not done, because it was life-threatening. However, that is just a business model, looking at the stocks, after the pandemic, of pharmaceutical industry in the months afterwards. Well, they had peak months. They had billions in extra profit. So, multinationals also play a key role in this game. You can determine this, not just me. Many academics have been reporting this as well. The multinationals and banks have become the dominant players in this world. On this earth. They use all these systems and mechanisms we just mentioned, the free states. That is very important, because we granted them the required immunity. It is the ideal situation for psychopaths. Like a father saying to his child, do whatever you want, I'll take care of it. In a way, it all boils down to that. They get away with anything, it's the world's biggest villain's wet dream they have created. That is what leaves us in the situation we are in now. Brussels currently dictates over 80% of what happens in the Netherlands. There are currently all sorts of campaigning to get everybody to vote, which is to make you agree with the current system.
And to instill the illusion that we live in a democracy.
To make one feel like they have contributed to the democracy and real change is about to happen. But if people are looking back at the last 40 years, what has actually changed? Which of the political topics have actually made a change? In the campaign.
It's the mask they are wearing that changes, the core remains.
Because nothing of the people who are dedicating themselves to these parties, they are decent people that stand for their principles and do want to make a change. However, as soon as the coalition has to be formed, they are sworn in not on the people, but on the higher powers, for example in this case, the king. That is where the change lies, that doesn't take many words.
Ik hoef er eigenlijk niet zoveel over te zeggen. Als je kijkt
If you look
hoe
at
dan
how
de
ministers
ministers
rule
het
the
land gaan
country and
besturen,
how things
dan
only
zouden we
worsen
eigenlijk
for
alleen maar
most of
slechter
us,
krijgen in plaats
except
van
for a
beter.
few.
Enkele krijgen het beter, de massa niet. En als je dan ook ziet, na de
And you
politieke
also look at the
carrière van
political
zo
careers of these
waar die dan
people and where
later
they end up.
belandt, dan
I
denk je
end
van,
up
oké,
thinking, okay,
minister
the little
betekent
meaning of
letterlijk
minister
dienaar.
is servant. But who
Maar
are
wie
you
zie je
serving
dan?
if I look at
Als
the
ik kijk
pattern of
naar
your
het
career during your
patroon
service, but
wat
also
zich tijdens
afterwards?
je dienaarschap manifesteert, maar ook daarna. Ik bedoel,
I mean Minister De
Jager was
Jager
ooit de minister
used to
van
be
Financiën,
Minister
dat
of
is een periode
Finance
werd over
during the
deze gezegd.
period of the ESM approval.
Ik zie
I
hem nu
don't
niet
see
als
him
postbode
walking around
rondlopen.
as postman.
Ik weet
I
dat
know
hij
he has a
een hele
top
hoge
position in that
functie in
world
heeft.
now. I
En dat
don't
gun ik hem
begrudge
van
him
harte.
that position.
Maar
But
het
it
geeft
does
wel
tell
iets
you
aan.
something.
Het
It
geeft
tells
gewoon
you
iets aan. En
something.
als het maar eentje
Had
is,
it been only one case, you would have been, well okay, such can happen,
fijn.
but
Maar
it
het is een
follows a
tendens.
pattern.
Je ziet
You see a small group of people. That's why I call the governments puppets, and therefore they are also the connections between us and the powers.
en de machten, ze
They
spelen
are
een
playing
rol.
their role.
Ze
They
verkopen
sell
een
a
deel
part of
van zichzelf.
themselves, otherwise we would not see this pattern.
Dan zou je
Then we
zien
would
wat
actually
ze
see
allemaal
the
beloven.
promises during the campaigns, after the elections being fulfilled.
Kijk nu naar alles
Look at all the election
wie
programs. Who
zegt
says we
nu
need to
op dit
completely
moment in
change
zijn
the economic,
verkiezingsprogramma
financial, monetary
dat we het
system?
totale financieel, monetair, economisch systeem moeten veranderen. Dat de banken
That we need to get rid of the
eruit moeten
banks
zoals
as we
je
know
ze
them
kent.
currently. I
Ik heb er
found
wel één
one.
gevonden hoor. Maar als het gaat
But if we
over de
talk about
grote
the major
partijen
players who are
die
on
zeg maar op
stage
het
now,
toneel zitten,
because even
zoals
Forum for
zo'n Forum
Democracy
for
can count
Democracy,
themselves
blij
lucky
zijn
if
dat ze
they
er
manage
een
only
keteltje
one
aan mogen
office.
schuiven. Dus laat
Let
staan
alone the
dat de
political
partijen waar je
parties
werkelijk
you
iets van
really
mag
expect
verwachten van
something
grote
from,
verandering,
like big changes.
die zitten
They
onder de
are under
radar,
the
die komen
radar
niet in
and
het
they
beeld.
even do not
Terwijl
come to the
daar
light.
zitten
While we
burgerinitiatieven
see the citizen initiatives who have a
die
very pure program that
deelzaken
will
kunnen
really
afnemen
serve
wat
us in
ons
there,
werkelijk gaat
which is
dienen.
what it
Daar
is
gaat
all
het om.
about.
And having potential?
And do have the potential, absolutely.
Dus het is
So the
allemaal wel
movement of the
vanuit de
people is
burger,
there, from out of the citizen
vanuit de
movement, you
burgerbeweging,
could say.
zou je kunnen zeggen.
I
Volgens mij is
think
het
one of
zelfs
the
ook niet de
parties
naam van een
participating in the
die
elections,
werkelijk
which
naar
actually
verkiezingen
carries that
streeft,
name in my
is
view,
volgens
it is
mij ook
called
de
burgerbedging.
burgerbeweging.
Well,
Als je dus
if
dat
you
soort
see those
programma's ziet,
programs,
dan
I
denk je,
think,
wauw,
wow,
die
they
zouden
should have
eigenlijk
those 140,
die
150 government offices.
They don't get any
dan krijg
attention.
je dus een
Then
werkelijke
we'd have real
vertegenwoordiging van
representation of the
ons.
wish of the people
En dan
and the
ga je
system would
werkelijk naar
actually
een
serve
dienstbaar
us.
systeem. Een systeem
A system for all of
voor
us.
ons allen. Hè?
But
Maar dat
that
is er
doesn't
niet.
happen.
Waarom?
Why? The
De huidige
current
machten
powers don't allow it and
geven geen
manipulate
bestaan,
everything in such a way that
alleen
nothing will fundamentally
en
change.
manipuleren alles op zo'n manier dat er eigenlijk helemaal in de bodem, er verandert helemaal niks.
Using the media. Because they don't get any attention in the mainstream. People don't even know these parties exist, which is obviously a serious matter.
Het komt
It
een
is
beetje
only
hier en
locally,
daar,
here and here,
lokaal,
a bit of this and a bit of
dit en een
that.
datje. Ze
They
hebben niet,
don't
zeg
have the
maar, de
means to
middelen
break through.
om door te breken. Want dan
You
heb je
don't
niet alleen
only
de
need
draagvlak nodig, je
support.
hebt ook
You
geld
also
nodig,
need
je hebt
money.
de
You
relaties
need
nodig
connections
om
to get into the
in te breken
mainstream.
in die mainstream.
Na deel 1
After part 1 of our interview, quite a lot has happened. It went viral worldwide. In the meantime, we have Spanish subs, Finnish, French. Italy did publish the video. It is really incredible. What happened to you afterwards?
jou gegaan daarna?
Ja, ik heb dit nog
Yes,
nooit eerder
I never experienced
meegemaakt.
such in my life. It even did not come to my mind that this would
Dat
happen.
dit zou gaan gebeuren. Ik was
I
eigenlijk
was
iets heel
actually
anders,
doing something very different when we did the interview, and perhaps it is good to mention this.
Ik heb een heel zwaar en heel heftig leven
I
meegemaakt.
experienced a very heavy and intense life, until today, which has split into a first life and a second life, a real death.
Doodgaan. En ik heb eigenlijk
And I've actually decided for myself the last 2.5 years to do something with the trauma I have incurred. And there are quite a few, because I got stuck.
Again?
I got stuck in myself, yes. So, I've been lucky enough to embrace a specialist who was able to deal with trauma processing. And from there I made little steps which eventually led me to share with the audience. Just like we did.
Courageous.
That is a lot of processing. But it also has a lot to do with my new life, which has been running for some 22 years now. I started a positive life. I became a social entrepreneur and I am very committed to life. And I saw, especially from the Netherlands. The Netherlands, as you might say, is quite a country of parochialism. And where often a culture is expanding from out of ignorance, but especially from out of fear. And I already saw it on forehand, because of the manifestations I am working on in my life, are becoming so big, worldwide, worn by humanity, that I already felt it. If I do not clear myself up inwardly, as well as outside myself, then unfortunately I know the Dutch people and their mentality too well. If something gets beautiful and becomes a success, it needs to be broken. That is apparently tradition in the Netherlands. There are only a few things that are praised in the Netherlands. Yes, if our soccer team wins a world championship, then we are all happy and that is positive. But when it comes to essential things that are good for us, they often break you down. And I thought, if I get more clean inside and I become more and more strong through trauma processing, just like the manifestation outside myself, the moment will come that the Dutch will show their nasty tendency, we are going to destroy it. Then you better clean your own slate completely. Make everything clear, where you come from. Then they cannot do anything with it anymore. Because after all, it is not about me. It is about the manifestation. Because once a manifestation has been realized, I am going to start something else. So, that is the way I started. To get rid of it from within, it gave me a lot of relief. It freed me enormously. It was really a kind of birth. I also found it very intense. I have to say I have seen worldwide what has happened. In the meantime, I have heard that over 18 million people have watched the interview. Moreover, about part 2, I am not sure, but from part 1, which has been published before, more than 18 million. Part 2, who knows, some more, but perhaps the same. That was not just about me but also about the current power structure here on Earth. The financial system, because people need to know about that. But I did not expect this to happen. I did not hope for this either. It was more something for myself and for what I am creating. Because I'm dealing with a lot of people around me. I have 5,000 people in some manifestation gathered around me, in 5 different countries. I bear a lot of responsibility for that, because I once started an initiative, started a manifestation. Perhaps later on we can go into that and what it is all about. But I thought, it is not going to happen that, because of the dark period in my past, they are going to break it down. Because trust is hard to gain but easy to lose in the Netherlands. All based on fear, but okay. People don't even know what they are talking about.
Where does that come from? Are you talking about the fact that this is something human, or is this a matter of conscious control of a higher power structure, that the good things will be destroyed?
I did. I think it was in part 1, and otherwise it was in part 2, but I did mention, and it seems almost a commercial, the Protocols of Zion. The Protocols of the Wise Elders of Zion. And I still believe that if people are going to read it, they will better understand what they are in. Yet I have received comments from people who have read it and they were overwhelmed.
Echt van wow.
Really? Wow. We really live in a time what is written in there, while it is already an old document. So, more and more people begin to understand where all the reactions, also from us, come from. Because we are talking about a matrix. Once they produced a movie about it, it even became a trilogy, 3 parts. Then I think, wow, it is just a movie, but it shows as clear as possible where most people live in a kind of dream that is not real. And what if you are part of the dream and then I come up with a story like this? It really happened. I have to say, as far as I know, more than 95% or 96%, which is a rough estimate, is overwhelmingly positive. They are incredibly positive. Do you know that even for you people are praying, worldwide? That teams are formed to support you, to be able to continue your work.
Yes, that is beautiful.
It is incredible what has happened. On the other hand, we have also seen poison coming our way. The arsenic, the biological meal was the reaction, with a touch of arsenic in it to break it down. Most of the time it is an energetic mechanism, that sometimes works through them without even knowing. It works on their fear, because when I am speaking the truth, then it becomes a real possibility that the world and the reality they live in, their comfort, is going to shake.
Is breaking down, yes.
And that is scary because change is scary. So, you are already afraid and you got some more fears. Then it is far more easy. And they tried to do that to me in the meantime. To break me down, and trying to prove that I am a liar, a fantasist, and mention the whole range of what you can imagine. For not accepting the truth, because I am speaking the truth. This is the reason why I am married to a woman for more than 10 years. For this. I say what I say, I do what I do, and that is right. Because I have not so much to hide. I am hiding something about my old life. My first life. That is pure protection for myself but also for many others. But over the last 22 years that I came back and really became who I am. You can ask me anything.
Yes. Because that is the hardest part, what you are telling me now. You cannot talk about those things, out of protection of yourself and others.
Yes.
I understand that very well. But a lot of people are using that as an argument to say that you are a fantasist. That it is not true what you are saying and that you apparently have another agenda. How do you look at it and what can you say about it?
Yes, I get that very well. I mean, what they ask is, I know someone who said, give me a curriculum vitae. Yes, and I look at it and I think, boy oh boy, how can you ask such a thing? I mean, I cannot. First, I have no CV, I was always an entrepreneur. But how can I write a CV about my first life? That's self-employment. Also including cars, textile, the ladies' fashion line, in import and export. Those were the top players. Do you really think back then, that I was a saint? Hello. I was just a top criminal, okay? How bad do you want me to tell myself that I was bad? Do I need to tell that I am a murderer, which I am not? I mean, what do they want me to tell about that? I cannot tell anything. And quite simple. Everything I say for the people who are still alive, I will draw them along with me. Actually, it comes down to over and out. And all of that because I need to prove that it is like it is? One can also look into worldwide investigations and testimonies that already exist, because I am not the first one. It is a lot worse. This is timeless. Once there was a rebel, he was a carpenter, he performed miracles here on earth. He told us who he was. He was the Son of the Highest Supreme. Yes, he did miracles and they still did not believe him. No, you know who he was? He came from the devil. He was a Satanist. Yes? How much more do people need to know to see what is going on here on earth? How much? How much? And I do understand what they are talking about. Of course, I can understand that. They cannot understand what I am talking about, because it is not part of their life. That is not possible. I mean, it is the same with the breaking point you asked for, which was very difficult for me. I was invited. Do you really think they say, "Hey Ronald, we have a party, come on, we are going to chop little children"?
No, of course it does not work like that.
How can you think like that? Such is a very careful route, involving two of my colleagues who joined the inner circles, who invited me to also join the inner circle, because I should gain more strength, more power. That was a trust relationship that they have built up with me in the long run, and they thought I was ready for this. How could they know that this was a trigger for me? That was not the intention. So, it is nonsense to think that, just like on a normal Saturday evening when everybody is going out, that I ended up on a massacre with children. Those are just images people create, while for me the invitation, the truth about that, already gave me the shock I could not handle. And we are purely speaking about an inner circle, from a religion that is sick. And we all feel shocked about that. But then I have another example. Also about children. Because if we need to throw it all out there, because people stay where they are, that is the problem. The good people. It is not the bad people, there are only a few. Bad people do their thing. But it is the good people, worldwide, who do nothing. For a very long time, and I am a little angry with them.
Rightly so.
Because I was still in my youth, between 15 and 20 years old. Via family, first line, I heard stories from nurses who were sent to India for a mission, for development assistance over there. Those people. I am trying to control myself. Those people were burnt out after 4 or 5 years, completely traumatized. Nurses back in the Netherlands, no one was allowed to know. But what was this all about? Children. Again. Every time, children. Organ trafficking. We just think it is normal for a baby to be saved. But where do these organs come from? And those children are still alive the moment they remove their organs. Those nurses could not cope with it anymore. India. I am not sure if this is still going on right now. World, stand up. Go find out. Organ trafficking. Children. No one is talking about that. No one is taking action. Those Satanists, fuck them. That is just a pathetic tiny little group. Organ trafficking, worldwide. The god Mammon. How much more shit do you need to get from me? I now hear stories, including lawsuits, in England, about the rape of young girls on a massive scale and the culprits are acquitted. We do not protect our own children. What kind of a sick world is this? This is our future. And I can testify, start with damaging little children from early on and your world becomes even sicker. It is a license to a third world war and a total destruction of humanity, if we continue the way we do now with our youth, with our children. And then they say that I am a liar? A fantasist? Look around and wake up.
Word wakker.
You don't
Je hebt
need
mij niet
me.
nodig.
You don't need me. Not at all. I might be so far, finally in my life, after all these therapies and processing, that I stand up for the children. Because I care for them. Very much.
And you were one yourself.
Yes.
You know how it is.
Yes. For 2 years they got me completely worn out. Back then I have had it with my dad. Then, through the Child Protection Board, I was placed in a sheltered home to protect me. Then I got so-called loving caregivers for 2 years. Yes. I even did not know what it was, sex. I did not even know. For 2 years long. Then you cry out for your daddy and your mommy, while you actually come out of hell. But rather hell than this. Yes? I know what is going on in this sick world. I've lived through it myself. Tell me I am a liar. Go and look in the mirror. Who is lying here? You. It is you. You don't want to see the world as it is. I promised to control my emotions today, to keep it nicely monotonous, as it should be, but I can't. I am who I am. And I am so committed to life, that is my mission. That became my mission, my life task. Good management of all life, that is my mission. For the children.
And you needed that trigger.
Yes.
That is why we are here.
I have nothing to do with all those people. I can understand them. But I will ask, please, look inside yourself. Why does it trigger you when you see me and hear me? And with all I have to say to you, what is going on within yourself? What is being touched? Why do you come in defense? Why are you in denial? Why do you need it from your mind to burn me down? Because we are talking about that now. A small part considered it necessary. The mass does not, but a small part thinks it is necessary. What is it? What is this in yourself that you need to do this? Take a look at it, be honest with yourself. What is your agenda? Do you really want humanity to live in duality forever? Or do you want us to gather together? Because that is possible. I am already working on it. It is getting bigger and bigger. It is like a virus they cannot destroy. It is a virus of unconditional love. That is what we are spreading.
In which you do not have to prove who you are but just being you.
I am who I am, and for fun I showed you my passport, so you can watch it. You can even go to special services to check out if it is false. But hello. I am just here and I stand.
You just said you have no CV, neither from your past. You made it very clear why that isn't how it is. But still, a number of questions have been raised, especially after the first interview. The questions we have received are, for example, when did Ronald work at the stock exchange, because it is nowhere to be found.
No, you cannot find much about my whole first life. Neither about my second life. I am not the type of guy being active on the internet just like the whole herd. Most people are careful with their privacy, but in the meantime, I see them sharing literally everything on the internet. The level I played on and where I come from. If you would like to investigate those circles, you actually will not find anything. We do not exist on the internet. Finally, for fun, because I was busy with a manifestation and it was needed to be found on the internet. Together with my partner, re-established in 2008, the family Bly. And the funny part was, the thought behind it was, if you are going to become one family, like little companies, entrepreneurs, individuals, you unite in one family. Then you can organize a manifestation, like I used to do in the social society with each other, from, for, and through each other. If you became a member of the family, that was our thought. Then you got the opportunity to add the adoptive name Bly behind your own name. So, I became a member and with me many more, because you're able to find them on the internet. They had the opportunity, if they like, for example like with me, Ronald Bernard, so that became Ronald B. Bly. So that is why I created an account with a pseudonym for the social media like Facebook and LinkedIn. To have an account, to be able to host the manifestations of importance, like new organizations. Because without a private account you are not allowed to do this. So, I was, except for a very small and lost article from another project, not to be found on the internet. My wife is also not to be found on the internet, and there are many in my circles not to be found on the internet, because we do not feel the need to share our privacy and a whole private life on the internet. That is our right.
Yes.
So, there's not much about us to find. On the other hand, that is the funny part, when you see the masses on the internet. Somebody signs up or whatever, through Facebook or I don't know what, to their children, everything and all, their birth date, what they are doing day by day, the name of the child, when it is born. You got everything to know from people through the internet. That is up to them.
Publicly owned.
What is it?
We are owned by the government.
Yes, but we are very cooperative, aren't we?
Indeed.
I mean, everybody is talking about their privacy, but they throw everything out in public, but we are not like that. And we don't do that. So, you cannot find a lot about us on the internet. But back to the CV, because a curriculum is quite a theme in the Netherlands, at least in some particular circles. I would like to repeat. I corresponded with some guy. I have indicated that I do not have a CV, because my whole life I was an entrepreneur, I never needed to apply for myself. The second thing I indicated is, I will never write a CV about my first life. That makes no sense at all, because everything I should write down, are indications of the deeper layers. Because everything I did, official companies, also had a substratum. Yes? A lot of things that could not stand the light of day were played out in those deeper layers. I did not just get in the financial world by coincidence. Perhaps I did not sufficiently explore this in the first part of the interview, but you did not just get a seat automatically on the stock exchange. It is not like this, oh, we have a seat for sale. It is quite naive to think like that. So, to avoid that from that period, because we are talking about a period from 1982, I have to dig deep. 1982 until the end of 1994. So, we are talking about 12 years. In which I was very busy and active in all forms as an entrepreneur with deeper layers that did not stand the light of day. There are many interests involved from a lot of people. I will never make it known. Besides, neither I cannot, for example, the people who tortured me. Do you really think that I can make a phone call? That is also impossible, but in case of, because we all need witnesses. Do you really think they say, yes, that's right, I did this and that to him? And do you really think that people who made exchanges with me to ruin other countries will say, yes, of course we did that. We liked to do that. No. That does not work like that. There is nobody in my circles who has the feeling or the need, if they are still alive anyway, to testify about that. I can tell you something else. When I crashed down, revived to life again, the crying mother, after that I came in several private clinics for more than a year to recover.
gekomen om te herstellen. Die hadden
They had to deal with a professional oath, the oath of secrecy.
Uiteindelijk,
Finally, as they saw my internal injuries, just everything what was wrong,
gewoon eigenlijk alles met mij.
they began to wonder what had happened. Then, yes, it still is a difficult part. You have to experience it yourself to know. It is a bit the same as living in Syria nowadays and half your family is shot to pieces. You are suffering seriously. It takes a long time to process trauma.
Yes, sure.
But, it is not real, right? Those people are bastards. But okay, I think those are really bastards. But I know. The consolation is that all strikes back.
They themselves are deficient.
Everything strikes back. Because I have no remorse, I think it is just bastards' behavior and I can understand that very well. They must listen inwardly. Because there is a lot to heal. But when it comes to recovery, the doctors asked me what had happened to me. Then I told them the truth. Just like I do now. Do you know what they did? They called out for all kinds of specialists. Psychiatrists, psychologists. Everybody had to look into my mind, because this cannot be true. You are describing a movie. The Fantasist. Yes. Then finally, because they made a lot of diagnoses, I actually found it humorous. I thought, gosh, all of them are smart and intelligent scholars, professors, all of which make diagnoses, while I am just speaking the truth but no one believes me. Then I gave permission for a few loved ones from my most inner circle, trusted relationships. I gave permission to interview them. A few weeks later, I still remember the white coats with their files, entering the room. Dazed. We are sorry, Ronald. We cannot help you. Your trauma is so serious. We cannot do that. At last someone believed me. People do not know the world where I come from. Most do not.
No, which is also relatively small.
Yes. In relation to the matrix everyone lives in. It's a bit like in that movie, there were also not so many who lived outside. But they lived in reality.
The Wizard of Oz, and his tiny little friends behind the curtain.
Yes, sorry I cannot expose everything.
Yes.
I do not only consider myself. Children are very important to me, because I also received comments like, yes, you should have gone to the government. You should know how I have gone through a great deal with the government. The government does not serve us at all. And what was I supposed to say? They invited me? For what? Where is the evidence? Who would believe me at once, while others do not believe me?
There are no comments now, it ended up everywhere. Also with the authorities.
It is rather serious, because the things I am talking about are from long ago. But if I see what is going on, well, I do not want to say on a daily basis, but still very often is in the news. What is going on with little children? It is not all about child sacrifices or child abuse, donor trade, organ trafficking. It is about so much more. 17,000 children are only dying of hunger and thirst every day. Are we all made out of concrete? What is wrong with this world? I am very concerned from the heart. That is my inner driver and that is what is going to happen. Because I notice, and that is the beautiful part, that more and more people are standing up. And they understand more and more. We are the change. My wife asked me if you really want to change the world. What do you need to change? I said, the banking system, the financial monetary system. We discussed this extensively in the second part. I already showed you how these mechanisms basically work. That's what everyone can criticize, but then they need to do a good research for themselves. Because you can find it on the websites of the central banks and the BIS, etc. It is just readable now. Why? The truth is put in front of you, for everybody. People need to make a choice, and the need is really a need. No choice also means a choice. This is the time we are in now. Our free will is respected, in once again sanctified. Two traces start showing up now in the field. And it will be needed to make a choice. The matrix is really going to play its part. Are we going to stand up for ourselves? Are we going to develop things ourselves again? Because what we are talking about, concerning the elections, we give our voice away. We give our right to others to make decisions for us. As long as we maintain that kind of mechanisms worldwide, then we also make a choice, don't we? We choose their program. That is a slave program.
By joining it, no responding and stand up against it, yes.
Yes, so that is what I told my wife in France. It is the banking system, the monetary financial system. Then she replied, well, that is where you came from. I said, but hello, I made this promise to myself that I would never go back in there. Well, she said, if this promise was to yourself, perhaps you can possibly break this promise for once. If I say something or make a promise, I will always keep my promise, so that was very difficult for me. But I did it anyway, so for once in my life I broke a promise, and it was to myself. In order to map the mechanism, the monetary system, the banking system, in any case, that model, and to create a tool, to offer. There are all kinds of tools now being developed worldwide, offered to the people. Also concerning energy, in healthcare, the financial system, worldwide there are manifestations emerging, all of which are presented to us to do things differently.
Because you are still in contact with people from the banking industry, how do they respond to the story you bring about?
Well, very positive.
Oh? Ja.
Yes. Because at first, I got a lot of support from people who are still serving in this world, in the old world. Wow, you have the guts to tell people about the things we do. That was one of them. They are also caught, you know, those people want to get out. There are not so many bankers who are independent. Those are the bribed ones, they know everything. But most people within the banking systems are, just like everybody, stuck with a mortgage, with a family, they are deeply in debt, depending on their position. Just saying, it is not all black and white, right? It is not us and them. We also need to reconsider the dualistic principle. So these people are giggling inside, and they really hope for people to stand up and choose different. So we can finally do something good. People do not expect that every banker is a hero, who will sacrifice everything, by telling what is going on in their world.
No, so you mean to say that they are on the tip of their chair to tell it? They don't have the guts to do it, and they're waiting until they get the support of the population.
Yes, because they are, until today, actually not interested. I mean to say. What is the average person talking about? No, you need public support. You cannot expect everyone to be a hero. So yes, as long as the people do not vote differently, are not standing up, everything remains as it is. So that is one thing. I was in a meeting with an ex-top banker. And This man got a message on his cell phone from a colleague who is still in the business. He said, well, what do you think just happened? One of our former colleagues is telling about blah 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 etc. And he sees it and said, Ronald, look what I just got from an ex-colleague from the top.
Fantastic.
He said, I will tell him, yes, that's right, because he is sitting next to me right now. People who came out of this world, maybe it will surprise you, but the people who did have the courage to escape the system, are jumping into the deep and they no longer live an easy life. They also need support, and a kind of shelter. If we approach all those bankers, armed with a knife, saying you are a banker, because there are some people, there are children from bankers, who rather say during their lecture at school that their father is a pole dancer in a homo bar, instead of telling that their father is a banker.
Yes, I also heard of that.
Yes, so it is very difficult for a lot of people to get out of it. If the people think black and white about everything there is, right, then only a few will be released. Most of the times it occurs through crisis, and what we see is a lot of bankers who are released through suicide. That is also a way to get out.
Yes, they fly from their own bank buildings without wings.
Yes, it always has to do with so-called accidents. But for a lot of people it is very intense. In fact, I can say that in the top layers, actually in all layers, many people are waiting for breakthroughs or support from the population, but that does not happen much. Most people prefer to stay behind their keyboards, and their life I talked about. Their beer, their wine or whatever. Oh, we are fine.
But that is also deliberately programmed, as you said earlier, by mass psychology, manipulation, propaganda.
Yes, but that does not relieve you from the responsibility, right?
No, that is right.
That does not relieve you, because you still have inner feelings.
Yes, but...
We are not robots.
No, but personally I think, if you are spending lots of time behind the television, in front of the television I better should say, then it seems to be that you get swept away, or you are programmed, which makes you more powerless by losing touch or intuition.
Yes, people often experience a lot of powerlessness. The footage of Syria is shown to us. And we already talked about the things behind all that. You know what, sometimes I really do not know what needs to be done here on Earth to get the people moving because they are still sitting in their chair. And I do not refer to violent rebellion of some kind. No, I am talking about making connection. Unite. See who we really are. That is actually the only thing that matters. Oneness in diversity. I am not sure if I talked about this previously, but the metaphor behind it is, look at your body. Did I mention this before? About the little cells in our body?
No.
Our body is made up of all cells. Of course it has deeper layers, but this is concerning the cells. And every cell is unique, and has its own function and role. And it works together with all the other little cells, and thus makes its entire vehicle, the entire body. And we, here on Earth, humanity, every human being is a unique cell. And if it is going to function as a body, we get a bigger manifestation of a body. Because everyone has his unique capabilities, his unique talents. Those are most of the time the things that make you happy. But then you can say, but oh, if I am going to do this, I have no income anymore. Yes, but wait. We are a whole, which is not a utopia, we are a whole. But we just believe in the illusion that we are not a whole because we're stuck in the dualistic program. But if we get the courage to do this, like I always did on a small scale with, For example, 1,000 men on a housing project, then you already see that body emerge. Because we all have the same ambition, the same goals, and everyone is using their talents. And then it appears to be one body that perfectly fills each other. And together you build the most impossible things. At least, that was their thought. And that's the point.
Yes. And that awareness is needed.
Yes.
And therefore, it is good that you share this story.
Yes. Someone will have to do it once, you know. And yet, I really did not know where it would lead me. I really did not know. Which applies to all, from pregnancy, the baby to be born, to the future. When we chose to decide things together within the family, we did not have a clue about the things to come. If we had known, we really did not do this, so to speak, because this is the toughest route ever. But we are determined about that. Finally, we want, because our love of our children has expanded enormously, we finally want to face every child on earth, so we can say, "Dear child, we did everything, really everything to make your future, your world a better place. Because if we don't, you do not want to live anymore." And yet I ask every father and every mother, and everyone who loves a child, how much do you really love your child?
Hoeveel hou je werkelijk van je kind? Hoeveel hou je werkelijk van je kind? Ga daar maar eens over.
Fell about it. No thinking. Thinking destroys more than you want. Go and feel how much you really love your child. Of all other children, maybe you are a grandfather, maybe you are an uncle, an aunt. It does not matter to me, everybody has some kind of connection with children. They are our future. What legacy are we giving them? Based on the current vampire system, we are wrecking the earth. We do not even have an earth to live on anymore in the future. Do you think all those poisonings have no impact? Don't you think that if we do not make choices that a third world war will be a nice trip? Because that is the target they are aiming for if they need it, when nobody is deciding once there will be a third world war. And that is no fear-mongering. Just take a look around this world to see what's happening. They did not put those nuclear weapons down for no reason as a piece of art or whatever. All the things created by humanity have been used by them so far. Let's hope that's not going to happen. That people choose to walk a different path. If they have to, they are going to use them, because then we made a choice. After the Second World War, we also knew. After the Second World War we all knew it at once. No more war. No. We embraced the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Yes, we went for it. Every human being on Earth. No hunger anymore. Clothes, a job, a roof over your head. Wow. We were all so positive at once. It did not take long, and it was gone. And since the Second World War until today, we have had more wars and had more victims than in the entire Second World War. Did we learn something? Did we really come to our hearts? Are we really going to feel what it's all about? Did we really become human? Did we really stand up? Did we really begin to love our children? I see little of that. We are offering junk food to our children. Their whole youth is being spoiled. We create zombies that do not even come from behind their screen. Step up the train. 80 or 90% of the people are just focused on their screen. Is this the world we want? It is all based on free will, you know. So, it is needed, it is needed. I am so glad you guys dare to do this. You really are golden. I hope people will realize that too. That they will realize you did everything for free. And that you have no income. If there are 16 or 18 million people listening all over the world, would it not be of little trouble to donate, for example, $1 or €1 or whatever to you, symbolically from the heart? So you can even build a normal life and can invest in your teams, so that you can create a stage for the whole world, for all those people who also want to be heard? Because since that first interview, I received testimonials, also from dentists who became biological dentists, of which the entire pharmaceutical industry has gotten over them and have been financially broken. Their lives were threatened, they still fight for their existence. Perhaps they also want to speak out.
They are very welcome.
Yes. And so, I met a woman. She nowadays runs a therapeutic center for top managers. Women. You really do not want to know what they have gone through during their life, from their childhood, concerning abuse and mistreatment. This is the reason why they are in the top. They can turn off everything. Just like me, sometimes. I do not succeed so often anymore, because, and there I go again. But by acting very tough, women will reach the top. I got testimonials from a woman who has been abused in satanic circles until 13 years of age. There is so much suffering. There is so much grief. There is so much sorrow in the Netherlands. It is incredible. But yes, we are here in the biggest black hole in the universe. I am not sure if you are aware of that. Holland is the darkest hole on Earth. Almost all shit originated from this country. So it is our task to turn it around from out of the Netherlands. If I can trust the testimonies from the Dalai Lama, or whatever his name is. Friends of mine went 2 times to this Congress, when he visited the Netherlands. The Dalai Lama or whatever, to me it is always hard to pronounce. He said, the transition, the great changes on Earth, they will emerge from the Netherlands and are spreading all over the world.
I am convinced of that.
I had a big laugh back then. I thought, what is this man babbling about? But it starts to come clear that this man has had some foresight. Things have to be solved here. The shit started here and it will end here, and from here the good things will arise.
The Dutch Vision Movement.
Yes, make that happen. The Dutch Vision Movement. Yes, absolutely, do it. Because it is so desperately needed. We were responsible for the slavery, right? We established the cocaine industry. What do you think of the oil companies?
The Bilderberg Group.
The deltas of Nigeria, totally destroyed, including the people. Our oil companies. We can turn the black pages 1,000 times, and we still do not see a single blank page. Our VOC, Indonesia. How much do you need? It is awful.
We are writing one here right now.
We are masters in creating innovation, but we used it in a wrong way.
One of the questions people asked is, why is he still alive? Because that would mean that he is protected from out of the world he is talking about, and yes, that smells a bit like controlled opposition. What's up with that?
Yes, I received the same question. No, because it is very understandable from the world we know. I mean, if you do something against certain powerful rulers, they do not hesitate to invade a country, right? Most of the time it is about monetary affairs, like Gaddafi, which at one point had a golden dinar and a number of things, and then they invaded his country. And Gaddafi was killed off. So, they do not hesitate to kill people. So, I can understand this question very well. Because the world I come from is a very tough one. But I signed a contract. I think I told you about that in part 1. And that is for life. And what I was briefly talking about is my tapering off period, in which I began to refuse to do things. And they took me. You said to me, perhaps they equipped you with programs. No, that is not the point. But what I experienced back then from treatments and tortures was intended as an excitation, to ensure my silence for the rest of my life. That was one thing that was really evident. Don't you think you can get away with this? In no way. And what they made very clear to me, because, when it was all about myself, I would come over it. But what they made very clear during that treatment, and it is hard to imagine now for whoever, but once you are involved in this, you really can understand what they are talking about. It is not only concerning me, but it has also to do with your bloodlines. So, it was also about your wife, your children and name it. Everyone might have an accident or whatever. That was already a lot more of heavy artillery what they brought in. The only thing I put in front for them, because, it is insane to tell this, but despite of all the tortures, there was also a sort of bargain involved. I was able to tell that I also built up a dossier with sensitive information. Because I am not stupid either. I knew what level I was playing.
So, your life insurance.
Yes. That has also contributed to those shady dealings. We did not split up as friends, you cannot put it that way. They have made me completely rotten. Well, the finishing touch came from my body itself, I died. But there was more. The companies I ran were under constructions. Offshore constructions. It was one of the specialities to do it that way. They also made me. I better say, forced me, because what were my choices anyway, to renounce my business and my assets, the official business, what I built up. So, everything I did build up, so to speak through them, was headed straight. Well, just return the keys. So, in that sense, there was also no way out. All of that happened in that period. I was finally released. I was still busy with phasing out. I am, and no one could provide it. Collapsed, hospitalized, and from that moment on, I disappeared. And I disappeared for a long time. I need to say that too. I did not only stay in some clinics, for a very long time, I stayed under the radar. My wife, who became my ex-wife soon after, was hiding with the children, she also fled. We were all hiding for a long period of time. All out of anxiety. All out of fear for things that could happen to us. Because in one way or another, I perhaps redeemed my own life. But you do not trust it to be real. So, after I was discharged from the clinics and became physically fine, so to speak, I never returned into the system. I started to live a life outside the system. So, I did not have contact with my loved ones. This lasted 11 years, right? Everybody thinks, oh, it's all so easy what I am telling. For 11 years I had, and then they will say, yes, but this bastard deserves it, of course. Yes, I got everything back what I've invested in negativity. I can assure you that it is far worse to live with the knowledge that you still have children out of reach. You do not know if they are still alive, how they are doing. That is far worse than when you know your child is dead. That is also quite awful. But this is much worse. So, for all the people missing their child, I know what this is like. This is the worst thing that can happen. In that way, without bank accounts or even without something legal, I was living for a long time. In those days I went abroad. It was only many years later, because that was in 2002, 2003, that I, for myself and my family, everybody was like, Indeed, everyone abides by the agreements. It is over. Then I slowly came back and I came more and more in the picture. So yes, on one hand I was lucky, on the other hand, I died, but I survived. I do not have a complete answer to all of this. It has been the providence. I heard something about the higher power. What was I, for example?
Abduction. I asked, or controlled opposition.
Ah yes, controlled opposition. Well, what I can explain to everyone on earth is that I am a free man. Of course, I am an entrepreneur during my whole life, that is the feeling I always have with me. But I really can claim this. I also told that I have come to believe. I would like to say that I am not a member of any religious movement. I do not belong to any organization except for an organization that I am now part of. I am not allowed to advertise, but I am part of the United People Foundation. That is the only thing I am committed to, I am connected with. That has to do with this manifestation I talked about in an earlier stage. But for the rest, I am fully independent. Free. Yes? And concerning that goes beyond the earthly stuff, I appeal to the eternal. I am free forever. And for the people who the Muslim world respects or acknowledges the Holy Book, not only the Quran, but also the Old Testament, the Torah, and the New Testament. It is fully acknowledged by the Muslims. And I appeal to John 3:16. John 3:16 is sacred to me, and I believe in that, so I am redeemed.
Which means?
That is an article about the Creator of heaven and earth, who states that his firstborn son, in the translation it is said to be his only son, but that is nonsense. It is the firstborn son that is sacrificed for all mankind, so they are all free. That is a free translation of what the real purists will try to break down, but this is what it means to me. Everything has become a breakthrough. Everything is redeemed. Everything negative is gone. Why? Because of the breakthrough. And that is what I already explained in part 1. The moment we, the people, are going to stand up as a manifestation of light, everything will disappear. Because every negativity remaining on earth is through us. We are the channel. So, people who will allow the negativity to flow through them, they are no longer powerful. A breakthrough is achieved. They will get their status, their ambition, their money, their career, whatever. They will be bought. Their soul is taking over. At the very moment someone decides, I do not want this anymore, it is gone. That is what I meant when I said, if we are standing up with the mass, we are the manifestation of light. Then all the shit on earth will disappear. Because that shit no longer exists. We maintain it.
And thereby controlled opposition no longer exists.
No, nothing exists anymore. But so, I am fully free. Redeemed. I stand with it, and no one can claim me. In that sense, nobody here on earth can claim me. I can deal with anybody, because I live from inclusivity. Who am I to judge about someone else? That sounds almost biblical, oh well. But there are just certain truths. Because you come to this story of the prostitute. In the Bible there was a prostitute which thrown at the feet of Jeshua, most people know him as Jesus. And he said to the people, okay, she was a prostitute or she played for whore.
Mary Magdalena.
And then he said, if your slate is clean then you can throw stones. Nobody. Because if we all are honest, we all have something that's not right. Lies or whatever. So, I work from inclusivity. My mission is a good management of all life. I said before, I care about the children. Everybody who joins or can find themselves in a good management of life, of all life, is welcome. And of course, you may come from a dark hole, Fine. Perhaps you, just like me, have been up to everything. Fine. Take your own responsibility. Take the consequences, but don't be afraid. Because there is a whole network of people welcoming you.
wat je welkom heet.
Because every talent you are using for evil, you can also use for the good. And that is what we are waiting for. And everyone who stays there, fine.
Prima,
But on a certain moment it will not work out well.
toch niet helemaal goed.
Because you die, sooner or later. You eat yourself. So, I am alive and yes, I am protected.
En ja, ik word beschermd. Maar niet
But
door
not by
aardse.
earthly things.
Het gaat
It is about, as I call it, the creator of heaven and earth. And no, I am not a religious fanatic or whatever. I have faith, and if I had not, I would not have been here.
Had ik hier echt niet gezeten.
Because my oh my, you put everything at risk.